At 82, Sally Field is done protecting the stories that once kept Hollywood comfortable. For decades, she let the industry sell a polite version of her life, all harmony, respect, and so-called family atmosphere. She says that version was never real. Before her time in the spotlight closes for good, she wants the record corrected. In this video, we count down 4 names that shaped her private battles, from colleagues who smiled on camera while wounding her in private to partners who twisted love into leverage. The final name is someone the world still praises without hesitation even now. Number 4, Burt Reynolds, the partner who dimmed her light. Sally Field did not wake up one morning deciding Burt Reynolds was a villain. She fell in love with a public figure whose private habits slowly rewrote the story inside her. To the public, he was the all-American star, the grin, the swagger, the man who could headline a summer picture and charm a crowd. To her, he was complicated, distant, and over time controlling in ways that left her unsure of herself. This is where the myth and the truth finally pulled apart. He was born in 1936 in Lansing, Michigan, and rose from television to become one of the biggest movie stars of the 1970s. She was born in 1946 in Pasadena and moved from TV innocence to Oscar-winning seriousness. Their pairing looked perfect on paper, 2 stars with different arcs, a public love story that fed tabloids and studio narratives. The scale of his fame made the relationship visible. The scale of her work made her vulnerable to being defined by it. What put him on this list was not a dramatic betrayal, it was a pattern, emotional distance, a habit of using status to control the room, small decisions that chipped away at her confidence. Field has spoken about feeling edged out rather than supported, about how his stardom allowed him to set the terms of their public life while she paid the price in private. It was not one scandal, it was a long chain of small denials, denials of equal voice, denials of shared credit, denials of simple emotional reciprocity. There is one scene that names the problem clearly. It was not a courtroom moment or a tabloid incident, it was an on-screen kiss. In a late-night interview, Field called that kiss the worst she had ever had, and said there was a lot of drooling. On the surface, the line is humorous, but as a symbol, it is sharper. It shows a public intimacy without tenderness, a pattern of moments that left her feeling awkward, unseen, and unrespected. That memory became the point where she stepped back emotionally, and later used it as proof to herself that something inside the relationship was off balance. Words shifted the dynamic. He told the world she was the love of his life, a line he repeated in interviews and memoirs that carried the sound of regret. She accepted the compliment with restraint. She said she was flattered, but her private account tells a different story. She called him complicated and admitted relief that he would never read her memoir because the truths in those pages would hurt him and complicate whatever longing he still expressed. His phrase, "the love of my life," illuminated his feeling. Her careful response revealed the distance between his public emotion and her lived experience. That distance had consequences. Their relationship ended, and the closeness in their collaboration faded. Years later, he would express regret, and she would publish a memoir that placed the entire dynamic inside a longer history of childhood pain and personal rebuilding. The results were clear. Fewer calls returned, fewer projects shared, a final record where affection and harm existed side by side. She did not choose bitterness, she chose clarity. Speaking openly allowed her to reclaim the story and prevent the public narrative from replacing her own truth. Now watch how the set itself became the battleground. Number 3, Tommy Lee Jones, the co-star who turned the set into a battleground. To the public, he was the sharp, contained force who could anchor a drama with one stare. To Sally Field, he was the wall she kept running into. Their work on Back Roads in 1981 became part of the film's history because the strain was not subtle. It showed in the rehearsal room, on the set, and later in the director's quiet acknowledgments. Whatever audiences imagined between them never existed behind the camera. Jones was born in 1946 in San Saba, Texas, and rose from stage and television to become one of the most distinctive and uncompromising presences in American cinema. Field had already built a serious career by that point and arrived ready to meet him as an equal. Instead of finding a partner, she found resistance. It was dry, rigid, and often cold. Their styles collided from the moment the process began. She worked open and reactive. He worked tight, guarded, and unyielding. The combination pulled the life out of their scenes. The darker truth was the pattern that formed. Jones cut conversations short. He kept emotional distance even when the moment called for connection. His rehearsal pace carried a sharp impatience that left no room for Field's rhythm. Crew members later admitted they could feel the tension in the room, and director Martin Ritt suggested that the film's weakness came not only from the script, but from the fact that his two leads could not meet each other halfway. A director rarely makes such a comment unless the strain is impossible to hide. One moment defines the fracture. Field has told it with the plain honesty she is known for. During a rehearsal, she bit him. There was no joke in it and no attempt to soften it later. She did it because the working dynamic had reached a breaking point. It was a split-second reaction born from exhaustion, frustration, and the feeling of being boxed in by someone who offered no space to breathe in the work. His response was silence, a tight, shocked pause that made the entire room freeze. That moment became the line in the sand, the day everything cracked. The words that followed made the distance wider. Field once called him a wild man during that period, someone moody, unpredictable, and hard to read. Jones gave her almost nothing in return. He stayed locked in that private stern shell. When a co-star offers only clipped replies and closed doors, the process stops being collaboration and becomes survival. That is what she experienced on Back Roads. Long days held together by willpower rather than trust. The consequences were visible on screen. Scenes lacked connection. The film felt uneven. Critics noticed that the lead pairing never clicked. Roger Ebert wrote that Field delivered a committed performance, but the necessary chemistry was missing. This had nothing to do with talent. It was the result of two actors who could not share the same emotional space long enough to build something real. The set paid the price. The director paid the price. And she paid it most of all, carrying the weight of a shoot that drained her rather than shaped her. Years later, Jones reportedly approached her and apologized. A quiet gesture that suggested he understood what had happened. It did not erase the past, but it softened the memory. Even so, she still recalls Back Roads as one of the hardest chapters of her career. Whenever she speaks about it, the bite and the difficult days return as symbols of how deep the rift had been. When blunt resistance empties the room, what happens when the next partner brings pure unpredictability instead? Now meet the wild card who refused to be contained. Number 2, John Malkovich, the beautiful wild card. To the world, he was the intense new force of the 1980s. Sharp eyes, sharp presence, and a mind that seemed to live one step outside the frame. To Sally Field, he was something entirely different. He was the actor who could lift a scene into something alive while leaving her unsure of where the solid ground had gone. The public saw a rising star. She saw a storm wrapped in charm. He was born in 1953 in Illinois, the son of educators, and worked his way through theater with a speed that surprised Hollywood. By the time they joined the same project, he had already built a reputation for risk. Nothing in his process followed the usual rules. He rose by ignoring the rails that most actors depended on. What placed him on this list was not cruelty and not betrayal. It was the relentless unpredictability he carried with him, a quality she respected but never fully trusted. Field said it plainly in her 1986 Playboy interview. She called him a complete lunatic, not as an insult, but as a direct description of the way he entered scenes with no plan and no guard. He did not rehearse. He did not prepare in the traditional sense. He simply stepped forward and let instinct guide him. That is what shook her. She worked. Oh, with discipline. He entered like a spark in a room filled with dry timber. One moment on set captured the truth of the dynamic. The director called for a simple exchange, 2 lines and nothing more. Field stepped in prepared and steady. Malkovich stepped in loose and wandering, letting the silence stretch until the energy in the room shifted. She watched him begin not with the line, but with a look. Eyes narrowed and posture changing in a way that made everyone believe the take had gone wrong. Then he spoke, a beat late, voice low and unscripted. The crew froze. Field held the moment because she had no alternative. When the take ended, he smiled and said, "Let us not lock it down." It was not humor. It was his method, and it demanded that she adapt whether she wanted to or not. That line, "Let us not lock it down," became the pivot. It captured what made him brilliant and also what made him disruptive to her rhythm. She admired the spontaneity but felt the strain of never knowing where the floor was. His unpredictability pulled her in and pushed her off balance again and again. She continued to praise him in public, calling him lovable and calling his craft fearless. Yet she also admitted that working with him meant stepping into uncertainty every single day. There were no patterns, no reliable cues, no safe decisions. After filming ended, their paths did not naturally cross again. There was no feud and no rift, only a quiet understanding that their methods lived too far apart to meet without friction. After tension and chaos on set, what does it mean when she finally chooses to step back from an entirely different kind of partnership. The last entry will leave you genuinely surprised. Number 1. Michael Douglas. The mismatch she wouldn't force Sally Field recently allowed a truth to surface, one she had kept tucked away for decades. She revealed that she once turned down a starring role opposite Michael Douglas in Romancing the Stone. On the surface, it sounds like a simple career footnote, but her reason reaches deeper. She said she stepped back because she believed another actress fit the role in a way she never could. For her, that actress was Kathleen Turner. My instinct was that there is somebody else who is better, she told People. Then she named Turner. That long-legged Kathleen with her husky voice, there is nobody else like her. Coming from someone as accomplished as Field, those words carry weight. Stepping away from a major film with a major star was not a small decision. It hinted at a quiet tension, not anger or hostility, but a sense of misalignment she had no interest in forcing. Michael Douglas was a powerful box office draw, yet she still stepped aside. She trusted her own read of the project more than the pressure surrounding her. In her Guardian interview, she said she never felt that she had many choices, ever. Turning down Romancing the Stone was one of the rare moments in which she claimed her authority. She did not simply decline a role. She protected her sense of fit, her sense of tone, and her belief in authentic chemistry. She felt that playing opposite Douglas required a dynamic she did not see in herself for that story, and rather than shape herself to match it, she let it pass. There is no record of her accusing Douglas of cruelty or disrespect. This was not a feud. It was not a clash. The tension she describes as professional and grounded in instinct. She sensed a mismatch. She sensed that the film needed someone with a different presence. She sensed that forcing herself into a role that did not feel natural would weaken the entire performance. This matters because Field has always spoken openly about how boxed in she felt early in her career. She resisted typecasting, dismissive assumptions, and the pressure to remain the agreeable face who never challenged the limits around her. This was the moment she changed that pattern. Walking away from Douglas's film showed that she trusted her own insight more than the weight of the industry's expectations. When she finally revealed the truth about Douglas, she was not exposing resentment. She was acknowledging a turning point, a moment when she chose her craft over the shine of a studio opportunity. She did not want to be miscast. She did not want to chase a pairing she did not believe in. She did not want to stand in a role better suited to someone else. It became a quiet act of self-respect, one that shaped the path she walked from that moment forward.